Hello, everyone. Today, we're diving into a moment that changed the course of human history forever. We're calling it the hinge of history because everything before this point was spiraling downward, and everything after begins a radical climb back toward God. We'll be looking closely at just 4 verses, Genesis 12, 1-4, and exploring why the call of one man, Abraham, was actually the start of a massive rescue operation for the whole world. Our goal is to uncover the rich layers of meaning in these verses and see how they can speak to our own spiritual lives. Let us first spend some time to read and reflect on the passage. Genesis 12, verses 1-4. Abram's call and migration. The Lord said to Abram, "Go forth from your land, your relatives, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and curse those who curse you. All the families of the earth will find blessing in you." Abram went as the Lord directed him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. The silence after Babel. To understand why this call matters, we have to look at the chaos that came before it. The first 11 chapters of Genesis show humanity in a bit of a tailspin, from the fall in the garden to the first murder, and finally to the Tower of Babel. By the time we get to Babel, humanity is scattered and confused. It's like the dialogue between God and man has completely broken down. The world was in desperate need of a fresh start, a rescue operation. The divine intervention. But here's the beautiful part. God doesn't give up on us. Instead of addressing the masses who turned away from him, he tries something different. He calls just one man. As Bishop Robert Barron puts it, this rescue operation starts with a people trained to listen again to the voice of the Lord. Think of Abram as the new Adam. Where the first Adam stopped listening and hid in the bushes, Abram listens and steps out in faith. The radical command. Now look at what God actually asks him to do. Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house. In Hebrew, this command, lek leka, is incredibly radical. He's telling Abram to cut off everything that gives him security, his political identity, his social safety net, and his economic inheritance. It's a powerful lesson for us today, too. Sometimes faith requires a departure from what's comfortable before we can ever arrive at what God has for us. The obedience of faith. What's amazing is how Abram responds. There's this beautiful literary envelope in the text. In verse 1, God says, "Go." And in verse 4, the text simply says, "So Abram went." There's no arguing, no "let me think about it," and no negotiation. He just goes, apparently without a trace of effort or a single if or but. That is the definition of the obedience of faith. The blueprint of salvation. When God calls Abram, he doesn't just give him a command. He gives him a blueprint for the future. He makes 3 massive promises: a great nation, a great name, and a universal blessing. If you want to understand the rest of the Bible, keep these 3 in mind, because they form the narrative backbone of the entire Old Testament. Promise 1, great nation. Let's break those down. First, the promise of a great nation. At the time, Abram was childless and landless, so this sounded impossible. But this promise is eventually elevated to a formal covenant in Genesis 15 and is fulfilled through Moses and the Exodus. This is where God finally gives Abram's descendants a land and officially makes them a nation. Promise 2, great name. Second is the great name. In the ancient world, making a name great was royal talk. It meant a dynasty. This promise is elevated to a covenant in Genesis 17 and finds its historical fulfillment in the kingdom of David. David becomes the king who establishes the great name of God's people among all the other nations. Promise 3, universal blessing. The third promise is the big one: universal blessing. God tells Abram, "In you all families of the earth shall be blessed." This is the ultimate goal, to save everyone. It's the answer to the scattering at Babel. This promise is sealed in the covenant of Genesis 22 and is finally fulfilled in Jesus Christ. It's why St. Paul later argued that this promise was always meant to include the whole world through faith. Walking in the dark. To wrap up, let's remember that Abram was 75 years old when this started. He had to trust a God he didn't fully know yet and traveled to a place he had never seen. As Brant Petrie says, he had to walk in the darkness and the freedom of faith. It reminds us that faith isn't just a fuzzy emotion. It's the choice to obey, even when the evidence isn't all there yet. Total detachment. As we move further into the story, we see that the call to go eventually leads to the ultimate test on Mount Moriah in Genesis 22. God asks Abraham to sacrifice the very promise he received, his son, Isaac. This is the pinnacle of detachment. We're often asked to sacrifice our own Isaacs, our comforts, or even the good gifts God has given us, to show that we trust the giver more than the gift. The mystery of Moriah. Early Christians saw this moment as a pre-enactment of the Passion. Think about the parallels: a father offering his beloved son, and the son carrying the wood for his own sacrifice up a mountain. Just as Isaac, a strong young man, submitted to his father, Christ submitted to the will of the Father on that same mountain range, Calvary. A priestly kingdom. Why was Abraham chosen? It wasn't just for him. His descendants were called to be a priestly kingdom and a holy nation. In the Bible, election is never for your own sake. It's for the sake of others. Abraham's family was meant to be the instrument through which God's universal blessing would flow back to all the nations that were scattered at Babel. Reflection 1. The call to leave. The weight of letting go. Let's pause for a reflection. Real spiritual growth requires us to let go of our old identities, our Chaldea, to reach the promised land. We can't possess the new life God has for us while still clinging to our old selves. What are you holding on to today that might be keeping you from moving forward? Leaving spiritually means trusting God's providence more than our own control, acknowledging that we cannot possess the promised land of spiritual growth while clinging to the Chaldea of our old self. Reflection 2. The call to leave. The delay of promises. Let's pause for a reflection. Real spiritual growth requires us to let go of our old identities, our Chaldea, to reach the promised land. Abraham waited 25 years for the birth of Isaac. How do you handle seasons of spiritual dryness or delayed answers to prayer? Model answer. The story of Abraham teaches that delay is not denial. It is a period of purification. God uses time to expand our capacity to receive Him. We continue to walk in obedience even when we do not see the fulfillment. We can't possess the new life God has for us while still clinging to our old selves. What are you holding on to today that might be keeping you from moving forward? Leaving spiritually means trusting God's providence more than our own control, acknowledging that we cannot possess the promised land of spiritual growth while clinging to the Chaldea of our old self. Reflection 3. Being a blessing. God didn't just bless Abraham to make him happy. He blessed him so he would be a blessing. We are called to be conduits of grace to the families around us through acts of charity and living a holy life. We essentially become living tabernacles for people who don't yet know God. The Father of Many. In conclusion, Genesis 12, verses 1 through 4 is the moment hope entered the world. Through one man's yes, a path was opened that led directly to Jesus Christ, who brings us all home. That same call to go forth is issued to every single generation. The question is, will we listen? Sources and credits. This presentation was built on the work of some incredible scholars, Bishop Robert Barron from Word on Fire, Dr. Scott Hahn and Dr. Brant Petrie from Catholic Productions, and insights from the Dream Bigger series by Ascension. If you want to dive deeper into the call of Abraham, I highly recommend checking out these resources.
Thank you for viewing. May God bless you today and always.